Uh, Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, a very good evening to everyone. We are going to start this program within a couple of minutes. So, first of all, I would like to welcome all the participants and our respected guests over here today. Those who are present, we have got Dr. Muhammad Mozahidul Islam. He is the professor of Department of History, Jahangirnagar University. Bangladesh. We have got two distinguished speakers. Uh, Dr. Siegfried Wolf, he is the Director of Research, South Asia Democratic Forum, which is in Brussels, Belgium, and he is also the visiting professor of uh, Naresuan University, Thailand. And I've got with me Dr. Saurabh Mishra. He is the Assistant Professor, Amity Institute for Defense and Strategic Studies, Noida, Uttar Pradesh. Uh, would like to welcome you all to this international webinar organized by the Department of Political Science in collaboration with IQAC of Vidhan Chandra College, Rishra, which is situated in Hooghly, West Bengal, India. And the theme of today's webinar is state-sponsored terrorism in South Asia. We have today the inaugural speech was supposed to be delivered by Dr. Sudipto Roy. He is the MLA of Srirampur Assembly constituency and is also the president of the governing body of our college. But due to his busy schedule, maybe he is unable to attend the program right now. He may join us later. So at the moment, I will start the with our vice principal, Dr. Ramesh Kaur. He will deliver the welcome address. So I will kindly request our vice principal, Dr. Ramesh Kaur, to deliver the welcome address and welcome you all formally. Sir, it is now over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Novu. Good afternoon, everybody. Respected, distinguished research person, honorable dignitaries, dear colleagues, research scholar, beloved IPSC coordinator, beloved organizing committee conveners, joint conveners, program coordinators, and affectionate students. It is really a great pleasure and privilege to be present in the international webinar organized by the Department of Political Science in collaboration with IQAC. Being the head of the institute, I must congratulate the teachers of the Department of Political Science, especially Professor Prashant Kumar Sharma, as he has taken initiative to organize the international webinar. First of all, I, on behalf of Institute, must welcome the respected recognized person, Dr. Muhammad Mojahidul Islam, Professor, Department of History, Jahangir University, Dhaka, Bangladesh. Dr. Siegfried Wolf, Director of Research, SADF, Brussels, Belgium. Dr. Saurabh Mishra, Assistant Professor, Amity Institute for Defense and Strategic Studies, Noida, UP, India. I'll be immensely grateful as they have responded to our invitation despite their busy schedule. I convey my best wishes to our governing body president and all governing body members for moral support to organize the international webinar. I do hope that our participants would reap a sound harvest from the day's discussion. I firmly believe that the day's discussion will be interesting and interactive one. The survey of the day's speech and reciprocal discussion, I do hope, would further illuminate the minds of the teachers and thought. I wish a warm success of the day's webinar. Once again, thanks to all. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, sir, for this welcome address. So now I will request Dr. Muhammad Muzahidul Islam as he will chair this session. So I will now, sir, now I will hand over the microphone to you, and it will be up to you. You will conduct this session, and in this session we'll have two distinguished speakers, as I have already mentioned, Dr. Siegfried O. Wolf and Dr. Saurabh Mishra. So, sir, now it is over to you. You can start the program.
Thank you very much, and good evening to all. I would like to welcome all of you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, I would like to thank, this is my special gratitude to the Biral Chandra College for providing me this opportunity to be here in this occasion. And I myself, Muhammad Muzahidul Islam, I work for the Jahangir University in the Department of History. My expertise in the field of international relations and political science. And I am here with you as a moderator this evening. And there is a very exciting evening planned, including what I know will be a wonderful lectures from Dr. Siegfried Wolf as well as Dr. Subhasra Mishra. And in this program today, as you know, our topic of discussion is basically the state-sponsored terrorism in South Asia. So in this program, basically, as we have to be very much careful about time, therefore, I would like to allocate time for each of the speaker is about or between 30 to 35 minutes. And after that, the audience will have the scope to ask some questions if they have. Then we have this chat box over there in this webinar. And those who are interested to raise any questions to any specific speaker, they could raise these questions. And regarding the topic, as you know, this topic is a very timely and a very important topic, basically. So this is timely because it's not about like today, over the last 2-3 decades in South Asian context. The matter of this state-sponsored terrorism is one of the very burning issues to understand the bilateral and multilateral relations in South Asia. And this is also very important because we have to understand several things in a different way. Because the topic today what we are going to discuss is widely discussed, but there is always problem regarding the understanding of the concept state-sponsored terrorism itself. It is important because there is no denying the fact that the USA government list of the state sponsor of terrorism is dated, politicized, analytically muddy, and in general not useful for distinguishing which states truly sponsor terrorism and how aggressively they do so. Therefore, here is the option and opportunity for us to come up with some new ideas, understanding about the state-sponsored terrorism in the context of South Asia, and how could we conceptualize in the context of region as well as in the context of the contemporary global politics, with a special reference to the South Asian politics. Therefore, this would be, I believe, a wonderful discussion. It would be a wonderful evening. So, in this occasion, I would like to welcome Dr. Siegfried Wolf to deliver his speech, followed by Dr. Subhasra Mishra. So may I request now Dr. Siegfried Wolf to begin his presentation. Siegfried, you're muted. Would you please unmute your mic?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, it's a great pleasure and honor for me to meet you again, this time virtually, and have Jahangir Nagar University great memory from a field work. So it was a great pleasure to be with you and have so many colleagues and friends. My talk today is talking about state terrorism in South Asia. I will focus on Pakistan, but I think it's also important, since we are political scientists, I will give you some insights of my first ideas of how to conceptualize state terrorism and why it's important. So I will make a mix between a little bit of theory and, of course, of context. And the third point, which I hope we can then, I think I will not talk too much about it, but we have to, I think, later in the context of when we have a Q&A session on Afghanistan and the impact on India and South Asia. Yeah? So let me start. Since the 9/11 attacks on the United States, Pakistan has come to be perceived as a world epicenter of jihadist activities. As articulated by well-known academic Ayesha Shalal, while not all Pakistanis are terrorists, most acts of terrorism in the contemporary world carry the Pakistani footprint. Andrew Craig, a retired Foreign Service officer from the United States Department of State, argues that virtually every terrorist incident since the attack on the Twin Towers in New York has some connection with Pakistan. Either the terrorist is a Pakistani citizen of Pakistani origin or has supporters and contacts in Pakistan. Besides being in the US country proud on terrorism as a place offering safe havens for terrorists, Pakistan is not on the US list of governments involved in state-sponsored terrorism. However, the charge sheet against the South Asian country is a long one. Regarding Daniel Byman, the director of the Center for Peace and Security Studies at Georgetown University and a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, points out that along with Iran, Pakistan is one of the most active sponsors of terrorism worldwide. International experts are confirming that the country is not only flirting with jihadism, but is also using terrorism as an instrument of state policy for decades. Moreover, these claims are backed by Pakistani elites themselves. For example, former President Asaf Zardari publicly admitted that the country deliberately created and nurtured terrorist groups such as Lashkar-e-Toiba or Jaish-e-Mohammed as a policy to achieve short-term tactical objectives. Having said this, the following arguments can be put forward. State terrorism should be included in the study of terrorism. Here one must make the case that the notion that only non-state actors employ terrorism has to be rejected. In other words, states can be terrorists too. Pakistan must be identified as a state which systematically sponsors terrorism. Here the phenomenon of state terrorism in Pakistan stems from the fair defects in the country's political administrative system in general and the unhealthy civil-military relations in particular. These structural issues prevent the consolidation of any type of democratic reform or governance. More so, it paves the way for an uncontrolled, illegitimate use of force and many types of state terrorism. The sponsorship of terrorism is getting supported by military as well as civilian governments and elites as well. This we have to keep in mind. It's not only the military, it's the civil sector, it's also civilians. Before looking into the case of Pakistan's sponsorship of terrorism, it is crucial to point out some essential conceptual considerations on state terrorism. Despite the fact that there is no consensus on what defines state terrorism, experts identify some key characteristics or indicators for state terrorism, many of them using Pakistan as an empirical point of reference. First, state terrorism is substantive. So what this means? This means there must be a threat of violence or the deliberate action against individuals that the state must protect. The creation of an environment of fear through threat or the act of an implicit connection between the state and the terrorist attack. The second point which you have to highlight is that the act of state terrorism must be perpetrated by actors on behalf of or in conjunction with the state. This means that the state terrorism is committed by agents, meaning official representatives of the state, or by proxies who operate with the resources of the state. In other words, perpetrators of state terrorism can be from inside, especially the military or intelligence services, police, or other security personnel, as well as outside the state apparatus. Basically, agents and proxies are acting either on behalf of the state or with state approval, tactical or explicitly. In this context, actions by state employees in unofficial capacity, like personnel off-duty or on leave, but with tacit approval, are included in the scope of state terrorism. Subsequently, proxies as well as agents can be involved in a variety of private, non-state groups or operate as individuals carrying out acts of state terrorism. Third, state terrorism is the policy of using acts involving inspiring great fear as a method of ruling. As such, the act or threat of violence is intended to induce extreme fear among the targets, as well as observers who identify with the victim. In order to spread fear effectively, conducting public acts is an important instrument in the success of state terrorism. In this context, violence is not solely geared towards the eradication of enemies of the state, but as a means to produce fear. Fourth, state terrorism must be understood as a strategy of political violence containing a clear political motive, namely the desire to change the status quo. As such, the political objective can be the attempt to maintain a regime. Fifth, state terrorism is usually planned and implemented in secret, especially in nations where the government uses terror to maintain power and control. This secret or clandestine state terrorism is a form of covert action that consists of direct participation by state agents in acts of terrorism. However, state terror also takes overt forms. Secrecy, which is naturally accompanied by unpredictability, offers governments the opportunity to deny the involvement, responsibility, and ignorance or of downplaying of state terrorism. Sixth, state terrorism is systematically organized and should be seen as a concerted campaign of violence and not a mosaic of random or unrelated events or sporadic random acts of terror. Seventh, state terrorism is usually marked as an extraordinary brutality. It's supposed to generate level fear among its targets and those operating in a similar environment, filling those who identify with the victims with despair or persuading them to obey or comply. Furthermore, not all acts of repression or use of violence are illegal nor necessarily qualified as terrorism. However, when state action is excessive, meaning extraordinary brutal, but also used against unarmed innocent civilians, it qualifies as terrorism. And my last point, the intentional targeting of civilians is a significant feature of both non-state and state terrorism. As such, victims of state terrorism are unarmed and unorganized and therefore unable to deal with or withstand the aggression. In many cases, members of political opposition and critical writers and thinkers are targets of state terrorism. Here, the state may have multiple objectives. Foremost, to eliminate opponents while simultaneously sending a message to other current or future critics. In other words, the ultimate target is not necessarily the actual victim of aggression, but a wider audience of potential victims. Against this backdrop, it is most important to emphasize that governments use terrorism both domestically and across state boundaries, involving a large repertoire of repressive tactics. In practice, state and non-state actors employ similar strategies and use violence in a near identical way. Basically, the range of state terrorism covers the following broad types: boosting military support, financial assistance, endorsing repression, intimidation, human rights abuses, or the promotion of crime terror networks. The latter is especially used in the context of creating additional funds for terrorist activities, for example, through illegal trade of arms and drugs. More concretely, these types of state-sponsored terrorism can be found in measures such as providing arms, explosives, services like financial and purchases, training facilities, and military expertise, safe havens, basis for operations, falsified documents like the personal identification cards and travel transports, granting of diplomatic protection and support, immunity and extradition, intelligence gathering, and so on and so on. Basically, we can identify here the following main areas in which Pakistan sponsors and uses terrorism as an instrument, because now we have to bridge the theory with the practice, with the context. India, especially within the state of Jammu and Kashmir, Afghanistan and Pakistan provinces and areas under Pakistani control, namely Gilgit-Baltistan and the area called Azad Jammu and Kashmir from the Pakistani point of view. Due to the time constraints today, now, but hopefully we can talk later more about it, I will only share some of my views on Pakistan's cross-border terrorist activities against India. Since its independence in 1947, India has faced violent resistance ranging from left-wing guerrillas and fundamentalist Islamist terrorists to eternal ethnic atrocities. Many of the terrorists were either sent directly by Pakistan or its intelligence services had handled it. Generally, Pakistan is involved in 3 different types of state terrorism in India. First, it supports insurgency and separatist movements all over India. Secondly, the government also supports cross-border terrorism from Pakistani-based terrorist groups and other militant organizations. The latter includes also Pakistani and other terrorist groups operating from India's non-Pakistani neighborhood. Thirdly, Pakistan supports domestic terrorism in the form of Indian-based terror groups. It is important to note that Pakistan did not only use proxies, but also state actors for terrorist activities in India. These actors and proxies are getting orders, and as such, they are acting on behalf of the state. In this context, the role of Pakistan in terrorist incidents in India are matching also the before-mentioned indicators of state-sponsored terrorism. The Pakistani state is known to create the informal alliances with and between terrorist organizations and occasionally unites them. One example is the United Jihad Council, a coalition of military terror groups fighting the Indian administration in Kashmir some years ago. The fact that such groups can infiltrate and or integrate within the society in Kashmir and or are able to carry out such kind of attacks creates extraordinary fear among those who feel they can fall victim to this silence at any random time. That Pakistan is sponsoring terrorism is no longer a secret. Due to the distorted interpretation of its foreign relations and subsequent justification, it considers terrorism a form of legitimate self-defense and a way to promote its interests. However, Pakistani officials continue to deny and downplay any links with terrorist organizations in general and terrorist activities in particular. Due to the secret nature of these relations, Islamabad can distance itself from any accountability for the actions of the jihadists. Furthermore, as they deny links to terror groups, they hope to avoid censure by the international community. In this context, the strategy of downplaying the phenomenon of state sponsorship is often used as an instrument in Pakistani diplomacy. 2 of the most well-known examples of Pakistan's denial are the decade-long presence of Al-Qaeda chief Osama bin Laden and Taliban leader Mullah Omar in Pakistan. Having this in mind, we can state that Pakistan has a long record of establishing, nurturing, and protecting extremist terrorist group networks with the potential to export terrorism abroad. The fact that such activities endured under most military and civilian governments is an indication that these were part of a systematic and concrete political strategy. Especially in the case of India, one can see a clear and systematic agenda of state-supported terrorism. Subsequently, Pakistani jihadists routinely cross the border into Indian terrorists to attack and sabotage peaceful relations. As such, it does not come by surprise that Pakistan continues to offer protection and diplomatic support to terrorist groups carrying out attacks all over India. The political and diplomatic protection of Syed Salahuddin, the leader of the Pakistan-based terrorist group Hizbul Mujahideen, the large terrorist organization operating in the Indian state of Kashmir. Zaki-ul-Rahman Khalaqvi, who was a commander stationed at Lashkar-e-Toiba and is known to be one of the masterminds behind the 2008 Mumbai attack. Jaish Mohammed, Chief Masood Azhar are just some other. It's just another example. The attempts by Pakistani leadership to convince the international community, especially the United States, that is seriously abandoning state-sponsored terrorism are merely a strategy for whitewashing the action. The reality, however, is that Pakistan is unwilling to change its policy on the use of jihadi groups and the ideology, even as it tries to reassure the international community that is ready for a drastic transformation. By describing Osama bin Laden as a murderer, Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan suggests that he was a victim rather than an aggressor. This glorification of jihadism and international terrorism was not just a slip of the tongue. The fact that there is no official clarification from the Prime Minister office, nor a public comment by the country's powerful military, reveals that the remark indeed reflects a view held by most of the country's leading political decision makers. Even more, it is a confirmation of the military's official policy, of the national political leadership inclinations, and thus of relevant state institutions. This is already well known. But what is new is, however, is that such statements are proclaimed publicly and in the national parliament. Khan's statement in an open and blank confirmation that Pakistan continues to use jihadism, state terror, and cross-border terrorism as a tool in both domestic and foreign policies. Prime Minister Khan would not make such a statement without being assured to be backed by security sector agents. Foremost, Army and Intelligence Service ISI, both of who traditionally function as the main sponsor of the Afghan Taliban and numerous other jihadi groups. As such, the narrative holding that Pakistan is a victim and persecutor of terrorism is clearly undermined by Khan's statement and must be rigorously rejected, at least from my point of view. These losses of human life and that result from this rising lack of control, the economic losses and overall deplorable quality of life in Pakistan are some of the worst consequences. As such, we must state that Pakistan is one of the most active sponsors, or continues to be one of the most active sponsors of terrorism in South Asia. International experts confirm that the country not only flirts with jihadism, but has in fact used terrorism as an instrument of state policy for decades. Until now, Islamabad has rejected all such accusations. However, its support for the Taliban and the glorification of Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda leaves little to no doubt. Pakistan must be identified as a state which persistently and systematically sponsors terrorism. It is crucial to interest that Pakistan will not change its policy regarding the use of jihadi groups and their ideology, even as it tries to reassure the international community that it's ready for drastic transformation as indicated before. Islamabad policy possesses a challenge to security and stability in the region as large and presents a huge risk for people living in areas under the control of Pakistan authorities. It is time for the international community to acknowledge that Pakistan is a major part of the problem and not a credible partner when it comes to tackling the problem of jihadism and cross-border terrorism in South Asia. Prime Minister Khan just provided an incontrovertible artifact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip, very much for wonderful presentation and very informative. We have lots of questions, and some of them are very happy to have you here. This was fantastic discussion. And I would like to get back to you after the presentation of Dr. Saurabh Misra. I think it would be better for us to go one after another, and then we can go back for the question and answer session. So now may I request Dr. Saurabh Misra. Dr. Saurabh Misra is an assistant professor of Amity Institute for Defense and Strategic Studies, Noida. So will you please begin your presentation?
Thank you, Dr. Muzahidul Islam, for the opportunity and the invitation. And I also thank Dr. Prashant Kumar Sharma and the Principal Bidhan Chandra College for giving me this platform to express my views on such an important topic, on which just Dr. Bull deliberated in details. Actually, he has simplified my job and task by giving a detailed account of what, theoretical account of what state terror and what Pakistan is doing in the region. So, in fact, from my perspective, if I want to actually deliberate on the theoretical understandings of Dr. Islam, are you saying something?
No,
it's okay. So, from my perspective, conceptual perspective, I actually try to differentiate between state terror and state-sponsored terrorism, because state terror has a direct meaning or is kind of reflection of state agency directly affecting its own people or some other people. Maybe the meaning is like means technically it's a direct representation of state terror by the state, but state sponsored terrorism actually is with regard to the non-state actors that are being sponsored by states within from its territory or outside its territory for achieving some political, geopolitical, or various kinds of goal, as Professor Wolf described on and on. So, given in that background, if we look at the South Asian region, of course, there are this semblance of or the examples of state-sponsored terrorism, primarily in terms of Pakistani terror. But there are other examples as well, although small. As if we look at the history of India's northeast, we find that there is a kind of state involvement, and in fact, to name Chinese involvement in the northeastern region of India. And if we also look in the southern part of India, India itself has been accused of supporting LTTE in Sri Lanka, although the relationship, if there was any, was evidently abolished, or it could not sustain after when Prabhakaran went against the Indian system and assassinated Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. This change, but there is a difference between India's engagement with kind of organizations like LTTE and Pakistani sponsorship of terror, of agents of terror in the region. In fact, we can see the traces of Pakistani contact everywhere in South Asia, even beyond South Asia and Southeast Asian region, if we want to trace it, actually. But my presentation will be focusing on here at the moment to begin with is I'm actually trying to go into the causes of state-sponsored terrorism in South Asia, specifically Pakistan, because Chinese role has dissipated or become means almost negligible given India's engagement with China in 1980s, late 1980s. But there is a kind of concern again, given the geopolitical changes that we are looking at in the contemporary times, when we are looking at these contemporary times. So there's a huge and long history behind the state terrorism, primarily Pakistan. And I'll pick up from the Cold War period because US and the European involvement in the region comes very prominently when we actually look for how Pakistan became a great sponsor of terrorism in the region. This is all about the history of the Afghan means invasion of Afghanistan by USSR in 1979, and then US CIA response and the Western response to the communist bloc, specifically USSR, to specify here, in terms of non-traditional combat to the USSR forces in Afghanistan. So the raising up of Mujahideen, various other militias, Islamic ideological based militias within Pakistan through CIA money, through Western alliances that were coming in Pakistan, actually emboldened and gave the Pakistan as the confidence to use this as a state policy, or terrorism as a state policy in Afghanistan almost for a decade, when it ended with the withdrawal of USSR and the victory of the so-called Mujahideens and terror organization in Afghanistan. This was the moment when actually Pakistan spread its tentacles within South Asia, specifically targeted towards India. And this we can see in 1989 onwards, actually is the age or beginning of the emergence of Pakistan as the true epicenter of terrorism in South Asia. Because now it was left onto itself, and Cold War was about to end, and it actually had a great experience, almost 10 years experience of sponsoring terrorism in other states to non-state actors. And the success emboldened Pakistan to actually go for the policy of 1,000 cuts in India and take a revenge of 1971, in which actually Bangladesh got independence from Pakistan. So this is the reason why Pakistan, emboldened by Western support and the success in Afghanistan, became a fulcrum or epicenter of state-sponsored terrorism in South Asia. So, so the whole geopolitics of Cold War was responsible for that. And even after Cold War, after the evaluation of the geopolitical realities, United States and the Western alliance could not actually withdraw support from Pakistan, given its geopolitical situation and its importance to keep an eye on the whole region, because India was untrusted, given the whole history of ups and downs during the Cold War period. And India, and this remained till India actually recalibrated its foreign policy and had kind of a positive, started giving positive signals to the West, or specifically to say United States itself. So this is the history behind the emergence of state-sponsored terrorism in South Asia. And of course, then this Islamic global terror also comes up in the late 90s and early 2000s. And India, when it suffered the state sponsorship of terrorism and kind of in 1993 attacks, again, there was a great role played by Pakistan in which Dawood Ibrahim, who was actually responsible for 1993 blast in Mumbai, the series of blasts that had happened, that actually changed the dynamics also. Because from Kashmir, which was based on Islamic sentiments, actually was limited for India. But from 1993 onwards, the other parts of India also started experiencing the pain inflicted by state-sponsored terrorism by Pakistan. Yes, of course, there were internal situations and internal politics responsible up to such extent, because sentiments were, means there was kind of fragmentation, sentimental fragmentation within India. So Pakistan used that, but that was the point when it actually started spreading its tentacle in other parts of India in 2001. And from that point onwards, in 1993 onwards, India at great pain was trying to put forth its position in United Nations and other platforms of the world to recognize state-sponsored terrorism, to recognize Pakistan as a terrorist state, or designate Pakistan as a terrorist state. But it was not being successful. Even when it has actually proposed the International Convention on Terrorism in the United Nations, it is facing great difficulties with respect to the definition of terrorism itself, because again, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter here. So all these dynamics are involved with a great extent. Thankfully for Pakistan, the geopolitical conditions have always remained in its favor. In 1990s, this means non-reliability of India and the US and India and Western relationship, because it was gradually getting momentum. By the end of 1990s, it was on track that India was open towards the Western alliances and Western countries, specifically United States. So what we see through this period is the Gulf War and the 2001 9/11 attack, from where Professor Dr. Wolf began. Actually, the change sentiments about terrorism or recognition of terrorism suddenly comes up in the international community, because US was infected with a great means a terror attack. So this is the turning point from where actually the special status of Pakistan, which it was enjoying through the whole Cold War period, starts changing. And some kind of pressure comes up on Pakistan to deliver, to work against terrorism. So the geopolitical pressures coming up on Pakistan here, but not sufficient, because again, geopolitical conditions are working in its favor with respect to the Afghan operations that happened in after the 9/11 attacks. The Americans wanted the route which was provided by the Pakistan soil or the land, the easiest route, that is for supplies to the forces in Afghanistan, or this coalition of the willing in Afghanistan. So that importance of Pakistan remains, despite the fury and rage that even that US has expressed about the involvement of and the sponsorship of terrorism in Pakistan. It has not been able to put desired amount of pressure, or even it has not been able to enlist Pakistan as a terrorist state. Neither in UN it is possible, nor in its own statutes and laws that it has designed for such states. In fact, only 4 states are there enlisted in US list as terrorist states. They are Iran, North Korea, Syria, and one more by Sudan. These are the 4 states still, and Pakistan exists nowhere. Even through the committees like Financial Action Task Force, proper pressure is not being put upon Pakistan. Why? Of course, geopolitics involved. Now, Pakistan is needed for the Afghan negotiations, Afghan peace talk that is going on and happening in its northern side. So, for geopolitical reasons, Pakistan has always been important for the West for one or the other reasons, and the emergence of China as one of the other supporter of Pakistan for again geopolitical shifts and changes with regard to the CPEC project or with regard to its influence in the northern western Indian Ocean and the state of Hormuz and all. So, and because Chinese are also looking for its geopolitical advantages and new routes to exploit, means both politically and economically. So, this is the primary reason that is behind the importance of Pakistan, geopolitical importance of Pakistan, that it has made that it has become such a fulcrum of, and because it gets supports. All kinds of support means ideological supports from the Gulf countries and financial support from the Gulf countries. All this is like with using Hawala and using state channels. But yes, of course, it's being channeled by state agencies like Inter-Service Intelligence of Pakistan. So there's a great network going on within South Asia, Gulf region, the Sahel region also, and the inclusion of Al Qaeda, ISIS, everyone, and every source and every reflection of terrorism based on Islamism. Islamist ideology specifically can be traced to Pakistan, whether it is in terms of training, whether it is in terms of terror finance, or in terms of even moral support, and even safe havens in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region. So, this is all about Pakistan. So, what is being done to deal with this situation? Actually, I'm quite pessimistic in that term, in this sense. Despite India doing a lot, despite India making a number of treaties, signing a number of treaties and agreements with even with the Gulf countries, which are due to another changes that are happening in the region, are actually engaging India. Like UAE also cooperating with India on the terror front to counter terrorism. It has emerged as a great supporter of, helper of India in the region to counter terrorism. And we can see that even the Gulf states have transferred number of suspected terrorists and the number of identified terrorists to India for last 3-4 years. And they are quite recognized terrorists in the international society. So in that sense, India is trying to lobby against Pakistan, but the importance of Pakistan, geopolitical importance of Pakistan, both for the West as well as the emerging Asia, specifically to say China, has kept the momentum of state-sponsored terrorism in South Asia alive. And until and unless we are able to put actual pressure on Pakistan, which for me is not visible in the near future, given the rising importance of Pakistan from Chinese angle. Despite US has taken several steps like suspension of this defense assistance and this ending of the training program, educational program, etc. And Trump's overt tweets. Yes, it is not being able to put kind of proper pressure that is required to deal with Pakistan's sponsored terrorism in the whole region. And now we can see new sites of Pakistani-sponsored terrorism. Like in the Myanmar, there are evidences that actually that Rohingyas terror outfits are being trained by a Pakistani agency. despite we are hoping that it will end someday, there are new signs of engagements, new sites that are coming up for Pakistan. I don't know where it would end, but we can discuss a lot on this thing, and a lot of efforts have been made by India to de-radicalize youth within India, outside India. But yes, one thing we can note that after this much hyped surgical strike happened in Pakistan, and those overt fighter plane operations that happened in Pakistan on terror training sites, there has been statistically evident decline of terror activities in India, specifically from the Pakistani side. So we can see some changes, but we cannot make a judgment at the moment, because this will be too soon to make a judgment to arrive to a conclusion. The other point is the change in the status of Kashmir within India, from autonomous state to union territory. This also has changed the internal dynamics within Kashmir, within Pakistan. Pakistan is trying to exploit the sentiments in Kashmir, but has not yet been able to, of course, due to geopolitical changes, to exploit the opportunity on the international stages. But it has been able to some extent recruit a couple of more terrorists within the Kashmir, but the desired results are not coming up even for Pakistan. So this is a kind of situation which is in flux at the moment, and the results are awaited. It will take some time to assess what actually is the result of the change in the status of Kashmir within India, and what happens after the Afghan peace deal is struck. That is very important here, because on Thursday only 400 prisoners, Taliban prisoners, and they were actually the stalwarts of terror in the region, have been released. Now what happens? Fingers crossed here. We'll look after the. We'll have to assess. Means after all these pictures become very clear. So I'll invite elaboration by Dr. Wolf on the Afghan and the Kashmir issue also, because he might be tracking, and this will be giving a new perspective to us. So thank you, Dr. Islam. I'll take questions, because I had many things to say, but I focused on very brief points. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your presentation. This is wonderful, very informative. And now this is a session for question and answer. We have received a good number of very fantastic questions, which I would like to share you with by screen sharing, and then I will pick one or two questions. And after that, I would like to request both of you to respond to those questions. So as can be seen here, that there are many questions, out of which I chose initially 2 and 2, 4 questions for 2 of you. And after that, we will go for the rest of the questions if we have time. So the first question I would like to...
Geopolitical importance of Pakistan that it has become such a and because it gets support, all kinds of support, means ideological support from the Gulf countries and financial support from the Gulf countries. All this is like with using Hawala and using state channels. Yes, of course.
I would think it's just a matter of country uses proxies. I mean, the issue is proxies gives Pakistan an opportunity to destabilize India. Then you have to think about what are the aims of Pakistan. The aims of Pakistan is to destabilize Kashmir, to destabilize India, to create, to provoke restrictive reaction of India, to portray India as a restrictive state. This is a typical playbook of Pakistan. And this is some of the issues. And of course, Pakistan knows that in conventional manner, they don't have any chance against India. So this is why they use proxies. For similar reasons, I use proxies also in other states. So, but could we continue with another question, or?
Regarding Dr. Misra, do you have any response regarding this question? Like, is there any benefit? What sort of benefit Pakistan could achieve through this terrorism?
It actually hoped to achieve a lot of benefits, but it couldn't. The fact remains that this is Pakistan has lost a lot, which it cannot see due to its fanaticism, or we can call it policy fanaticism, or from the other front we can call it religious fanaticism, or the fanaticism with respect to hating India, because the whole foundation of Pakistan itself was the basis, or the foundation of Pakistan itself was against India. It defines itself means in opposition to India. So until and unless it changes that foundational definition, it will remain there, and it will keep losing on various fronts.
So I think Dr. Wall would like to say a few words about it.
Yeah, I just want to share one view with you. It's open for discussion. I know it's very provocative, or not provocative. It's when you go into the Pakistani mindset, they have two threat perceptions. One threat perception is India. But what India mostly forgets sometimes, not only India, but I mean India is well aware about this, but in particular when you talk to Western experts, they don't understand that the real threat perception of a Pakistani security mindset is Afghanistan. See, how I explain it to myself is India is something like this ideal enemy, ideal enemy which fits well into the ideology, So it's perfect for the military to justify the budget, the military budget, and everything else, So, but when it comes to the concrete threat, because Pakistan knows India would never really attack seriously Pakistan. There was never ever, you had this Bangladesh war, So, but this, India had no chance. So, but India never really invaded or intruded core Western Pakistan territory. So, but what Pakistan has always in their mind is they have a disputed border with Afghanistan, and they have the Pashtun question. So this is much more in their minds. This is a really central thing. This we should consider. This is why they have always this idea about strategic depth in Afghanistan and why they want to get involved in Afghanistan.
Well, in regard to this question, I have few words to say to share with you. So I believe that the Pakistani political elites, from the very outset of the state, like from 1947 onwards, they have always two strategies to survive, or for their own regime survival. That is to say, like the Islam, they always want to say like the Islam under danger. So therefore, this is our responsibility to protect it. And though they are not very pious, for example, the military elites, like in 1971, in the Liberation War of Bangladesh, they are committing lots of heinous crime, which cannot commit by a Muslim or any people, sensible people. But they are doing so, but in the name of Islam. So they always have a fear or at least try to promote that Islam is under danger. And the second thing, they're very much concerned, like considering always India as their enemy state, what I call India phobia. So then India phobia is basically their surviving strategy for like military elites and so on. Therefore, this is the only benefit of the Pakistan as a state, as a very problematic state, I would rather say. And particularly for the political elites, military elite, for them particularly. And they want to utilize these for their own survival strategy. So, yeah, so that is my argument basically. Perhaps we can go to sorry?
This negative state identity building.
Right. So, next point, next question is about, I hope that you can see it now, to Dr. Wolf. If Pakistan is an epicenter of terrorism, could it be said that China is the center of terrorism, which remains safe after projecting terror policies, and the whole South Asia suffer from these radical activities?
Well, I have a very strict opinion on this topic. For me, it's despite the fact that it's very interesting. On one side, of course, China is facing jihadist threat. But on the other side, we have many occasions in which, for example, China is protecting Pakistani-based terrorists, giving diplomatic support. So then one of my colleagues, she did a major research project on it came out during the time of Corona, that we have hundreds of Chinese scholars in Iran, in the madrasas, studying Quran and everything. So we have to really identify China's approach to this factor. We have also to understand is that China was able to have, I don't want to say a good relationship, but at least some kind of working relationship with the Taliban regime. Yeah. So the issue that China is some kind of Asian spearhead against Central Asian spearhead against Islamists, this is not true. Yeah. So there's some ambivalence. Yeah. And this we have to observe. Yeah, what is the China relationship to Iran? What is China's interest in Afghanistan? And of course, why is China protecting Pakistan-based terrorists?
Yeah. So thank you. I think Dr. Misra, in his presentation at the beginning, he said something about Chinese involvement in the eastern part of India. So do you like to add something with regard to this question?
Because there is a conceptual issue with the question also, because I again say that there's state terror and state-sponsored terrorism are two different things. In that sense, we see that China could be again be involved in the region with its using its proxies, actually that are available within India and other parts of the region. Because given the latest standoff, or actually ongoing standoff that we are having in Ladakh region, and even in Dokla in 2017, and the kind of responses and the standoffs that are happening between China and India, and the kind of strategy that are, and the kind of cooperation that are cooperation that is emerging between China and Pakistan, geopolitical cooperation in terms of Kashmir, as well as in terms of management of India-China border also, because nobody can deny if something, a brigade moves into the Gilgit-Baltistan region, Pakistani brigade moves, and here there is something happening in Ladakh from the Chinese side. It's easy to link, at least theoretically. There is a possibility, there's a degree of possibility of cooperation with regard to Kashmir between China and Pakistan. So in that sense, China, if there is a possibility of China being emerging as a new sponsor of terror in the region, specifically with respect to India, from perspective of India. Northeastern region, we have recently seen a couple of firings and bombings again in northeastern region by the Naga militants. So there could be a link and possibility, not to deny.
Thank you very much. So, in other words, there's a difference between the Pakistan as well as the China as a state-sponsored terrorism, with regard to state-sponsored terrorism in South Asia. Thank you. And now the next question actually is about, can white terror be called state-sponsored terrorism? Should people resort to raid terror when the cognitive cruelty of the rulers flow to the rule of law and scrupulously undermine the constitution? This question is from Prabir Kranti. Can you see and can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. When you talk to me or Mr. Kranti.
Yeah, right. Respond to this question, or should I go for the next question?
Yeah, we should go to the next question because white terror. I don't want to talk about white or black terror. I mean, this is.
You would like to talk about this?
No issue. This makes sense.
Okay, so I think we can go to the next question. Is Islam is a monolith?
I mean, this white terror means China, I guess. Because it's a little bit difficult to understand the question.
I think what he meant perhaps in the context of USA and other places, perhaps, but I think that goes beyond to our today's discussion. Just can ignore this question and then can go to the next question. So to this question to Dr. Misro, how would you conceive the inclination between Pakistan and China and new assertive stance of Nepal in the neighborhood in South Asia? Is Nepal slowly becoming a new space inclined to states known to be manufacturing state terrorism?
I don't see any new possibility or Nepal being state sponsoring terror sponsoring state. But of course, earlier Pakistan has been using Nepal as a route to terrorize India, means for its terror operation. Not only Nepal, but other countries also are being used as a route to India or into India. But with regard to China-Nepal equations, I'll say that this is not related to the topic first, but if I have to give an opinion, China is actually trying to use Nepal, especially the new political dispensation in power. But actually, if Nepal inclines towards China the way China wants, it won't be possible for Nepal to remain a normal state. That will be a problem. So my assessment says that Nepal will again try to recalibrate, or the internal political forces in Nepal will recalibrate themselves because already internal tussles and negotiations have started within the Communist Party itself. So the jury is out. We don't hope anything and Nepal becoming a new terror sponsoring state. And I don't foresee it.
Yes. Thank you very much for this clarification. So should we go for one more question or should we end our session here?
There was another question about this Islam being monolith. I never consider Islam as a monolith. And just as Hinduism is not a monolith, there are diversities, but yes, some sentiments, sectional sentiments are there, which we know as extremists or terrorists.
Yeah, please, Dr. Holmes.
Yeah, when we are in the final wrap up mood now, I want to in your Pakistan, but okay, it's all linked with Pakistan. But we should really, but for India, it's important is to have a more deep look at what's going on in Afghanistan. And there, India has to make, since we're talking on Indian issues, concerns, how India will be, what is the new policy of India in Afghanistan? I mean, what you have to think about what's going on, and now, okay, we have to wait. Many factors which we don't know. We don't know about election in the United States, if Biden or Trump will win, and what the effect is on the withdrawal of troops, and what is security about Indian assets, Indian development projects in Afghanistan. So, and I think when we talk about the context of state terrorism, we have to see the need for stronger Indian involvement in Afghanistan. I'm not talking about military. I'm talking about more diplomatic involvement. Perhaps even more the development project even might be more difficult now with this trim perspective on what we saw from the Iranian, Chinese context. So I think there's a stronger need to do more. This might even focus Afghanistan more in the context of state terrorism and as a proxy conflict area between India and Pakistan. This is one thing, and then the second thing is we don't know what's going on, how far Afghan Taliban will stick to promises, to the peace talks. I don't think much that Afghan Taliban will completely cut off the ties with Al-Qaeda, if they can do. We have increasing evaporation of the coherence between the different Taliban shuras. We have an increasing leverage of Haqqani network of ISIS fighters in Afghanistan. And there's still the strong desire to move this ISIS out of Afghanistan, and which means this has a strong impact on Kashmir. So, what is good news for Afghanistan perhaps might be bad news for India. So there is a strong tendency, likelihood that we have a major shift of foreign fighters who get bounced out of Afghanistan to Kashmir.
Right.
Well,
and it will be a really big for India to take into consideration.
Dr. Mishra, would you like to add something?
Well, I just I like his perspective. This is in any case going to be a bad news for India, because I really see again the realist folly that happened in 1979 onwards. So the realist folly is happening again. Means Taliban, US, which was not supposed to negotiate with terrorists, is negotiating with it. And the ultimate benefactor may be US for a while, because it wants to move out from Afghanistan. That's one thing. And of course, that might be good in the sense that some of the geopolitical influence are out, but still fingers crossed, because one of the sections in Pakistan is worried or suspicious, because it has always been fighting against the Taliban, and Taliban again could take it as another victory for them. The jury is out again. Of course, bad news for India in any case, whatever happens there. because India has been out from the talks. Only some kind of tangential engagement remains. The imperative is India should engage with Afghanistan, and it is trying to engage with Afghanistan in all other fronts, rather means except military. Military in the sense boots on ground. It's training Afghanistan troops. It's supplying some of these small means equipments and weapons, but not actual military reinforcement from India. Given in the civilian context, it's already there. It's trying to go bigger. But the problem is, if Taliban would Taliban allow India to do that? The question remains after the peace deals if that happens. So thank you, Dr. Wolf, for your perspective on that issue.
So thank you very much. I think it is time to wrap up our session today. This was a fantastic discussion, and I really appreciate both of you for your wonderful and excellent discussion. Well, I agree with Dr. Mitra, as you said, like this is really unfortunate for India. Particularly, I believe that having a neighbor like Pakistan is always very unfortunate. A neighbor like Pakistan in the context of today, because this country is not a democratic country since very beginning. As long as this government system of the country changed itself, it would always remain as a trouble for the rest of the country. So how could we get it over? Like in that case, what as a Bangladeshi or as a scholar in politics and international relations, my expectation is that Indian foreign policy needs to be more proactive in the regional context, particularly like in South Asian countries, including Afghanistan. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for us, not only for India, I'm saying like for the rest of the countries, to have the stability in the region. I said, like, once again, I would like to repeat that it is really very unfortunate to be the neighbor of a country like Pakistan, as we know that country today. So therefore, we expect more proactive foreign policy from India. So I think this is a time to wrap up our session. Once again, I would like to thank you very much, and I would like to the Department of Political Science, Bidhan Chandra College, affiliated with University of Kolkata, and it's all the faculty members and everyone. Thank you very much. Now,
Thank you, Dr. Salam. It was nice meeting you. It's so nice meeting you all.
You too.
And thank you to our organizers that they gave me this platform. Thank you.
So thanks to Professor Muhammad Mozahidul Islam for chairing this session, and would also like to thank Dr. Siegfried Wolf and Dr. Saurabh Mishra for their wonderful deliberations. So now, as we all know, we are going to wrap up this program very soon. So I will kindly request Professor Prashant Kumar Sharma. He is the Assistant Professor of the Department of Political Science, Bidhan Chandra College, Ristra, to deliver the vote of thanks. And with that, we'll end. And before that, I have a announcement to make that is regarding the feedback form. The feedback form will be provided in the WhatsApp group that has been created for this webinar. So the participants will all the participants will get the feedback form over the link for the feedback form in the WhatsApp group. So Professor Prashant Kumar Sharma, can you hear me? Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, you are audible. Yeah.
Hello, Professor Deptanu. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Deptanu. As far as the vote of thanks is concerned, at the very outset, I would like to thank our Vice Principal, Dr. Ramesh Kar, the head of the institution, for giving his approval and all kinds of required support towards the successful conduct of this international webinar. I express my heartfelt thanks to Professor Dr. Muhammad Mozahidul Islam, Department of History, Jahangirnagar University, Dhaka, Bangladesh, for agreeing to chair this international webinar and for making this a vibrant, thought-provoking academic event with his gracious presence. So thank you so much, sir. Now may I thank you, Dr. Siegfried Wolf, Director of Research, South Asia Democratic Forum, Brussels, Belgium, and visiting professor, Naresuan University, Thailand, for accepting our invitation to share with us his illuminating and magnanimous views about state sponsorship of terrorism. So thank you so much, sir, for being with us despite having a summer break at your side. Furthermore, I extend my heartiest thanks to Dr. Saurabh Misra, Assistant Professor at the Amity Institute for Defense and Strategic Studies, Noida, Uttar Pradesh, India, for accepting our invitations and sharing his meaningful, constructive thoughts with us. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to thank to the President of the governing body of our college, Dr. Sudipto Roy, and all the members of the governing body for their constant moral support to our webinar. My thanks also go to the coordinator of the IQAC, Professor Sadhunath Kundu, and our head of the department, Professor Devdas De, sir, for their support and guidance towards the successful conduct of this webinar. I also extend my heartiest thanks to all the respected faculties of all the departments of our college and all the non-teaching staff of our college for their moral support. My sincere and heartiest thanks also go to Professor Devtanu Maji, Assistant Professor of the Department of Political Science and joint convener of this international webinar, for performing his responsibilities in the best possible way. I also thank to all the participants present here for your active involvement and participation. Your active participation have made this event a grand success. So thank you so much for your participation. Last but not the least, my special thanks go to the students of our department and especially program coordinators Jamima Parveen and M. Suresh Murthy for their tireless efforts in organizing this international webinar. So thank you so much once again. Okay, Professor Devtanu, now it's over to you.
Yeah, so once again, thanks to all for participating in this webinar. Thanks to the distinguished speakers. Thanks to the distinguished chair. And with this, today we are ending. So I will now I will request you all to just leave this call. Okay, so thank you.